One. Now, those of you with keen memories might remember that Obi-Wan was originally going to be the follow-up to Jedi Knight on the PC. Come on, bear with me. But now it's been rejigged and reworked, and the Obi-Wan seen here is a third-person action and lightsaber 'em up, exclusively for the Xbox. Well, I hope that's clear. Much like the last movie, Obi-Wan is a prequel and tells the story of Ben Kenobi in his Ewan McGregor days, before he turned into that bloke out of Bridge on the River Kwai. Gamepad will bring you more news as we have it. But if anyone else at LucasArts changes the name of their games, I will personally go down there and hunt out George Lucas, grab my lightsaber, swirl it around my head. And this is Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds, the real-time strategy game based on the Age of Empires engine. Looks far more exciting than last year's Force Commander.
Long time, but the end is finally in sight. The Star Wars movies have captivated audiences for over 20 years, and now video game technology has finally found a way to capture the look and excitement of those films. Star Wars Rogue Leader for the upcoming GameCube system is the latest and greatest Star Wars game we've seen yet. You start the game as the one and only Luke Skywalker, piloting your T-16 through your homeworld of Tatooine. Anyone who's seen the Star Wars movies will be able to pick out lots of landmarks and characters from the movie here. Let's visit our old pal Jabba the Hutt, shall we? From this point, there's a huge array of stages to test your piloting skills. Are you ready to relive the assault on the Death Star?
Lock your spoils in attack position.
All right, it's time to knock out the deflection towers, shoot down some TIE fighters, and take out the Death Star. Fly down into the trenches for the final assault. Can you believe this is from the actual game? It looks more like an outtake from the movie itself.
Diggs, Wedge, let's close it up.
Just make sure you watch out for Darth Vader.
The force is strong with this one.
Stay low. Stay low.
Not an X-Wing fan? Don't worry. Take your pick from the entire Rebel fleet. Try a Y-Wing, A-Wing, the Millennium Falcon, or maybe this B-Wing here. Along with the gorgeous graphics, the sound quality is very impressive. Every little ship noise and blasting effect seems like it was lifted right from the Star Wars soundtrack. You'll definitely want to crank up the volume on this game. We've only teased you with a few key levels from Rogue Leader, one of the most anticipated releases on the GameCube. Keep watching Cybernet for the full review. You might just be blown away.
Show off in the starting block is the GameCube's Rogue Leader. You start out this space shooter controlling Luke Skywalker and end up in charge of Wedge Antilles. While Luke's off hanging with Jabba, Wedge and his gang are getting work done.
Everything starts out simple enough with an amazing introduction to the gameplay, but the learning curve is very high. Port of call number 1 is to destroy the Death Star in 3 easy steps.
First, take out the gun towers. Then get your thumb in a twist trying to target the TIE fighters. And finally, navigate your way through a claustrophobic trench, battling against further TIEs and Vader himself. This 3-pronged pattern is repeated across the remaining 10 stunning levels. I have never seen so much stuff on screen at once.
Well, it is a beautiful game, but it ain't perfect. Command of your ship is tough. Not only does it move at the slightest twitch of a finger, but there are buttons to control everything. From braking, to boosting, to rolling, to your targeting computer, to switching from first to third person perspective and back again, to regular firing, to ion cannon firing, to command of your troops.
beautiful. Yes, this is a space shoot-'em-up that works more like a flight sim. Even the damn joystick is inverted, which means that if you push up, the little bastard on screen goes down. I understand that some people like that kind of thing. I do not, and would have appreciated an option therein. And even though the level design is absolutely fantastic, with interesting things to do and places to see, it's extremely irritating that if you happen to crash and burn just before you get to the very end of the last part of the level, you've got to do the whole damn 3-part thing all over again. That sucks.
Still, though they frustrate me, these little niggly things don't ruin Star Wars Rogue Leader. If anything, they hook me in, making me stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning, whittling away at the evil Empire's defenses until I crack them. The fact that your ship is actually affected by the gravity of passing space rocks, and that during one level, you've got to rope an AT-AT's legs so it falls over, makes it all worthwhile. Against all odds, LucasArts has actually redeemed themselves. Worth the price of admission.
I will not let this republic be split in two. My negotiations will not fail.
If they do, there aren't enough Jedi to protect the Republic. We're keepers of the peace, not soldiers.
You know I don't like it when you do that.
Sorry, Master. I forgot you don't like flying.
Well, you've lost him.
If you'll excuse me.
I hate it when he does that. Anakin, don't do anything without first consulting either myself or the Council.
You don't need guidance, Anakin. I see you becoming the greatest of all Jedi.
The boy has exceptional skills.
His abilities have made him arrogant.
Excuse me. I'm in charge of security here, milady.
They are using a bounty hunter named Jango Fett to create a clone army.
Wait.
We must stop them before they're ready.
Your clones are very impressive.
They'll do their job well.
Blast, that's why I hate flying.
This is a crisis. The Senate must vote the Chancellor emergency powers.
As my first act, I will create a grand army of the Republic to counter the increasing threats of the Separatists.
Hasn't been a full-scale war since the formation of the Republic.
You must join me, Obi-Wan, and together we will destroy the Sith.
The dark side clouds everything. In grave danger you are. Begun this Clone War has.
Are you ready for another Star Wars tactic for the PlayStation 2? Well, as you can see, this isn't for Star Wars Starfighter or Super Bombad Racing. Time to put away the pod racer and pull out your skateboard? The game we're actually talking about is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. Here's all you have to do. First, win the game. Complete all 54 goals, and finally, collect 3 gold medals. You'll find that you've unlocked the newest Lord of the Sith himself, Darth Maul. How cool is that? Finally, you can use the Force for something other than fighting. Be careful, though, because catching air in a half-pipe apparently isn't part of Jedi training. Space, some debates are destined to continue forever. Coke versus Pepsi, Connery versus Bronson, sugar versus NutraSweet. But none are as heated as the one that will once again take place this summer in theaters around the world. Classic Star Wars versus new Star Wars. As fans await the release of the latest installment, they'll just have to make do with this, Star Wars Racer Revenge for the PlayStation 2. Though the concept of pod racing is based on elements in The Phantom Menace, a much older Anakin now takes the controls. This is a relief since the sound barrier breaking sport calls for Jedi-like reflexes as you weave in and out of canyons and caves. And don't forget, the villainous Sebulba is following closely behind to take you out of the race permanently. So keep your mind on the moment, young Jedi.
Skywalker moves up to first place.
You'll be able to choose between 18 different, and I mean very different racers, some of which are only unlocked after completing the tournament mode. Each have stats to review showing handling, top speed, and acceleration. Pick your pilot and it's off to the races. You'll find your adversaries are a bit more aggressive than they were in the first game. Jeez, thank heavens there aren't any traffic cops in a galaxy far, far away. Yep, you gotta fight for it. Good thing you can go to Watto's shop for some repairs and last-minute modifications. Just be sure to use your Jedi skill to keep from being cheated. The Versus mode alone makes Racer Revenge a worthy addition to the Lucas game library. To those who couldn't really care less about the movie, it's a next console update of a mildly entertaining racer. The controls are responsive and the graphics crisp, but the improvements aren't that drastic to distinguish it from its predecessor or other futuristic racing titles. But at the end of the day, you get to play as the future Darth Vader. What could be better than that? Okay, pod racer driving lessons maybe?
But when it comes to making movies, there's no doubting that the force truly is with George Lucas. The man who put Star Wars on the big screen has been honoured with one of the British film industry's highest accolades. The Hollywood director received a BAFTA for excellence in film from one of his biggest stars, Harrison Ford.
George Lucas, honoured by BAFTA in the world's movie capital. Harrison Ford presented him the coveted Stanley Kubrick Award on behalf of the British Academy for services to filmmaking in the UK. He was flanked by Carrie Fisher, who played Princess Leia in the original Star Wars, and Jerry Halliwell, who later performed a song for the director. Lucas has made a number of films in Britain, including Star Wars and the Indiana Jones series.
Well, I worked in Britain for over 25 years now, and so this award is special to me because it's really from, the people that I work with a lot, and I mean, I've had some very good times. I obviously love working there. That's why I've been there for so long.
The award came on the day the latest trailer for Star Wars Episode 2 was released. The film opens next month.
Well, you've lost it.
If you'll excuse me.
I hate it when he does that.
Levels of expectation surrounding the release of Star Wars Episode 2 are immense. Many fans were disappointed with Episode 1 and are hoping Attack of the Clones marks a return to form for George Lucas. Tim Muffet, Sky...
We have a much more romantic story, so that Padme's costumes are obviously more sultry in nature and, revealing and pretty.
There's one costume that George designed himself. And that was sort of the costume that, I came on set and everyone was like, oh. That was an interesting costume to wear. And it was really hard at the end of the day because the corset was so tight. They made my waist like 20 inches or something.
It's him.
Magical.
It's the great way that George sort of portrays women. They can be powerful and they can be soft and they can wear beautiful clothes and that doesn't contradict her strength. I think that's great with this character.
Let's sit for tight.
She's this tough, smart woman that everyone's trying to kill because she's such a powerful leader, and she also wears the coolest clothes.
You must join me, Obi-Wan, and together we will destroy the Sith.
The dark side clouds everything. In grave danger you are.
Age of Jedi that exists in the world we have now. In Episode 2,
I've watched all these swashbuckling films all my life. I was a huge Errol Flynn fan when I was a kid. And this seems to be the next step in the fencing age.
all Jedi don't fight exactly alike.
elegant weapon.
When we started, there was a particular style developed. It's a combination of samurai and Western sword fighting. And when we did Phantom, we sort of progressed that style.
You know, Nick Gillard creates a unique fighting style for each of the Jedi, and how it sort of reveals a certain element of their personality. A lot of the aggression that I hold in my character is exemplified in my fighting style.
He understands. You know, he moves really well, he's tough.
They're like marshals in the Old West. They're the keepers of the peace. They're given assignments to resolve conflicts.
Anakin, who's much more youthful, and I think Obi-Wan Kenobi's slightly more sedate.
Right. Oh, sorry, George.
He's much more confident now. It's 10 years or so past, I think. He's become the master, not the apprentice anymore.
Obi-Wan, his fighting style is much more by the book, even though he's obviously very skilled.
He has got extraordinary balance and hand-eye coordination. But yeah, it's a long process, and not just them getting the moves, but them keeping the character.
Getting the feet right and getting the steps so you can actually do it. It's a lot like dance choreography. Your feet have to be right so that the strikes look correct.
I'm trying to figure out who we had to talk to about your light color, your lightsaber color.
Oh, well, good guys are green and blue, bad guys are red. That's just the way it works.
No purple lights?
You might get purple.
It would be a shame for me to participate in a film like this and never get to use my lightsaber.
We've not seen Mace fight yet, and we know that he's second only to Yoda.
Good to G.O.
I guess because I'm such a fan of Japanese samurai movies, and I've watched a lot of kendo fights and a lot of stuff, I'm doing pretty good at it. Since I'm supposedly the second baddest person in the universe, I'm pretty efficient. I don't do a lot of fancy sword twirling or anything. I dispense people pretty quickly. Use as little energy as possible, but I'm pretty lethal.
Okay, cool with that?
And I think this is the first time that we really get to see all the Jedi in action, which is an amazing sight.
As one film looms over the summer like an AT-AT walker advancing through the snowdrifts of Hoth. Yes, by the twin sons of Tatooine, it's Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. And despite the underwhelming impact of Episode 1, the devoted fans of George Lucas's saga are fit to leap into hyperspace with excitement. None more so than the two arch enthusiasts who've been camped outside a cinema in Seattle since early January, without so much as a Klatooinian paddy frog as eaten by Jabba the Hutt to sustain them. Film 2002 headed off to the America's West Coast to see how those intrepid heroes are bearing up under the strain, and to hear about their hopes for Attack of the Clones.
Hi, I'm Jeff Tweeten. And I'm John Guth, and we've been waiting outside of the Cinerama movie theater for Star Wars now for 112 days.
You know I don't like it when you do that. Sorry, Master. I forgot you don't like flying. Well, you've lost it. If you'll excuse me.
I hate it when he does that. So what can we expect from Lucas's latest addition to the opus?
There's going to be a lot more character development, especially within the Anakin Skywalker on his journey to the dark side.
You don't need guidance, Anakin. I see you becoming the greatest of all Jedi.
The boy has exceptional skills.
His abilities have made him arrogant.
Excuse me. I'm in charge of security here, milady.
Isn't there a danger that it'll all be an anti-climax?
It's like pizza. Even when it's cold and been around for a couple days and has that little layer of crusty cheese, it's still, people still eat it.
They are using a bounty hunter named Jango Fett to create a clone army.
Wait. Come on, fellas, admit it. You've got a problem and you need help.
Here's to the crazy ones, the troublemakers, the misfits, the people that think they can change the world, because the people that think they can change the world end up usually do.
This is a crisis.
Senate must vote the Chancellor emergency powers.
As my first act, I will create a grand army of the Republic to counter the increasing threats of the Separatists.
So what's the secret to being a true Star Wars fan?
Well, a true Star Wars fan needs to know 3 simple rules. A fan shall not know disloyalty
or discouragement,
nor personal hygiene.
In grave danger you are. Begun this Clone War has
The surefire summer blockbuster sequel, Star Wars. Look at the next installment of George Lucas's popular space saga. And good news, Star Wars fans, no Jar Jar Binks. At least not in the trailer of episode. Set 10 years after The Phantom Menace, Ewan McGregor returns as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Natalie Portman as Padme Amidala, and changing lanes is Samuel L. Jackson as Jedi Knight Mace Windu. Joining them will be Life as a House rebel Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker, with the Lord of the Rings Christopher Lee dropping in for the 5th Star Wars adventure, and 3rd directed by creator George Lucas, called Episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
I will not let this republic be split in two. My negotiations will not fail.
If they do, there aren't enough Jedi to protect the Republic. We're keepers of the peace, not soldiers.
You know I don't like it when you do that.
Sorry, Master. I forgot you don't like flying. Well, you've lost it.
If you'll excuse me.
I hate it when he does that. Anakin, don't do anything without first consulting either myself or the Council.
You don't need guidance, Anakin. I see you becoming the greatest of all Jedi.
The boy has exceptional skills.
His abilities have made him arrogant.
Excuse me. I'm in charge of security here, milady.
They are using a bounty hunter named Jango Fett to create a clone army.
Wait.
We must stop them before they're ready.
Your clones are very impressive.
They'll do their job well.
Blast, that's why I hate flying.
This is a crisis. The Senate must vote the Chancellor emergency powers.
As my first act, I will create a grand army of the Republic to counter the increasing threats of the Separatists.
Hasn't been a full-scale war since the formation of the Republic.
You must join me, Obi-Wan, and together we will destroy the Sith.
The dark side clouds everything. In grave danger you are. Begun this Clone War has.
Background!
In Star Wars, in any of the episodes that we're making, extras are extraordinarily important in defining the place that we're at. To, you know, have people understand that there was another world there.
I don't know how we ended up here.
And where planet are you from?
Sydney.
There's sequences in Star Wars like the Cantina where I think that's certainly my favorite sequence, and that's entirely made up of extras, and it turned out to be one of the best in the whole saga.
Extras seem to have very high self-esteem, I think, because they're put through so much during the day. They're herded around like cattle.
Get on the bus! Get on the bus!
They don't do anything for hours at a time. So you have to really feel good about yourself.
As an ordinary extra, I say you're not a star, but you're a twinkle beyond Pluto.
The Ewoks.
The Ewoks.
Yeah. Why did you remember that one?
Oh, because I didn't get the part.
I've seen every Star Wars film in the first week it was out, and I just can't believe I'm here.
Stroke of luck, really. The Force was with us.
You're all normal pedestrians.
An extra is someone who is in the background of a scene who has no dialogue but may have a little bit of business.
You go in the direction I told you to go as I walked along the side.
You'll see that this is actually all fogged up, so it's impossible to see out of any of this, but I mean, that's the fun of acting, really, isn't it?
We actually don't need an acting ability.
I can't see where he's moving the lightsabers.
Jedi's don't have to see.
Got it?
Everybody falls for the strong signing type.
Yeah,
That's you, right? Every creature and every extra that you see in each movie has a name, has a personality, has a backstory, who they're some sort of being that has actually been given a life. There's one in episode 2. His name is Kit Fisto. Just an extra, a guy, but all of a sudden, like, put in his name, and now there's the story there. Like, you want to know something about him.
I love it. Shoot it.
When this goes on, I'm a totally different person. I'm female. Easy.
We have a sequence in episode 2 where we're in a nightclub.
Yo, I got a really good date for you.
Surprise.
Fixed you up. Here she is. Come here. Here. Put your arm around Tony here. There you go.
It's a very classic Western type of barroom scene where the doors fly open and the two gunslingers walk in.
We needed about 150 extras. There had to be a certain look to them.
I've never looked like this before.
I have been airbrushed all over.
It's a place that's in the lower depths of Coruscant, a place that we actually haven't really seen before.
There is one thing worse than working with me, it's being an extra in a Star Wars movie, okay?
And I would debate that.
First rule is, I don't care what you do. I don't care where you go. I don't care if you need to buy a paper, go to the bathroom, whatever. But the second rule is, you've got to tell me you're going to do it.
You guys just stepped off set. What happened?
We are indebted to you for your bravery, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
In episode 1, there's a scene, a particularly beautiful, haunting, dramatic scene where there are two extras who I think basically defined what extra acting is all about.
Congratulations on your election, Chancellor.
That happens to be Ben Burtt and myself in this sequence. Classic example for anyone, that anyone could be an extra, but they can do it a lot better than we did.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
One role Sam has taken is far, far away from some of his better-known characters.
You refer to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force. You believe it's this boy?
Ever since he saw Star Wars, Sam wanted to play a Jedi Knight. It took him 20 years, but in 1999 he appeared as Jedi Master Mace Windu in the Star Wars episode The Phantom Menace.
Anakin, don't do anything without first consulting either myself or the Council.
He's holding me back.
I'm a Jedi.
A Jedi? What do you know?
The boy has exceptional skills.
His abilities have made him arrogant.
You're not all powerful, Anakin.
Well, I should be.
I see you becoming the greatest of all Jedi.
No, Anakin, no!
However, American Graffiti's director George Lucas was searching for an actor to play an intergalactic smuggler in his sprawling space epic Star Wars. Fortunately, casting director Fred Roos urged Lucas to consider Harrison Ford.
I had been pushing George about Harrison, because I thought he was on the money, right, for that part. He had a great sense of humor, a great sense of comedy.
Using a devious stratagem, Roos hired Ford not as an actor, but as a carpenter to install a door at American Zoetrope Studios, which was adjacent to the building where Lucas was holding the Star Wars auditions.
He was working on the door, and Fred had been pushing me to use Harrison, but I had in the back of my mind that he was a candidate. But once we started doing the testing, there was no question that he was the one.
Ford was cast as Han Solo and joined two other relative newcomers in the cast. Mark Hamill played the youthful hero Luke Skywalker, and Carrie Fisher played the rebel Princess Leia, and all three of them together would take on the evil Empire. Filming at Elstree Studios outside London, Harrison was in his element, in the stimulating atmosphere of a lively production team.
And.
The mic was in frame. The mic was in picture. The mic was in picture. The mic was in picture. Going back to first position.
The sound department has what they have. Harrison is a kind of scruffy, independent soul, and that's what Han Solo is. So, in a way, there was a perfect match up there in terms of their personalities.
Yes, Greedo. As a matter of fact, I was just going to see your boss. Tell Jabba that I've got his money. Yeah, but this time I've got the money. I don't have it with me. My dead body. Bet you have. Sorry about the mess.
Ford had never been involved in a work of such complexity. He and Lucas created scenes which would later be seamlessly blended with special effects into a truly great film. In May 1977, Star Wars was released and quickly became a global phenomenon. It took $100 million at the box office in 3 months, faster than any other film in history.
We set 271.
What are you doing? You're not actually going into an asteroid field.
It'd be crazy to follow us, wouldn't they?
Sir, the possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field is approximately 3,720 to 1.
Never tell me the odds.
In 1980, The Empire Strikes Back reunited Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, and Han Solo. It was another blockbuster success and grossed $365 million.
Harrison's one of the few actors that's thought of and perceived of as a strong male role model who will cry in his movies.
Just relax for a moment. You're free as a carbonite.
Who are you?
Someone who loves you.
Give me the birth of Star Wars.
Star Wars actually started when I was in college. And I'd sort of gotten very interested in myths and mythology at that point. So I was toying with the idea of doing a modern myth. And then I thought, well, where most mythology takes place in a distant place. So I said, well, the only place that's left really is outer space. I mean, it's the only place where we don't know what's there and where it can be magical.
George set out to create a modern-day fairy tale that would blend traditional moral precepts with elements of science fiction. For background, he spent months reading books about myths, fairy tales, and psychology.
George believes in stories. I don't think George thinks there's meaning in the universe except as we invest meaning in the stories we tell ourselves.
He borrowed from both the great books of legend and from the westerns and Flash Gordon serials of his youth.
George doesn't make things up. He creates new things out of what exists, old stories. And he's taken those old stories and put them in the most modern idiom we have, which is film.
The Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
It doesn't have anything to do with special effects. It doesn't have anything to do with spaceships. It has to do with the same thing that made people sit around and listen to a storyteller go on about Helen of Troy.
20th Century Fox agreed to finance Star Wars. Lucas then spent a laborious 2 years writing, draft after draft, all by hand.
It was painful for George because he's not a writer he's not a born writer. Still, this day, the writing process is a hard one for him.
Governor Tuck, I should have expected to find you holding Vader's leash. I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board.
Charming.
Star Wars was the story of a rebellion against a tyrannical government, and it was set in another galaxy. At one point, Lucas had a 200-page script, so long he decided to divide it up. The first act became the original Star Wars. The rest of the script eventually became the next 2 movies of the trilogy.
So a lot of my motivation from then on was not only to get this movie made and have it work enough to get the other movies made, because that was what the original vision was.
By 1976, a final screenplay was ready, and production of the film began in Tunisia. A few weeks later, the production moved to studios in London. Although the 3 lead actors were American, the production team and crew was British.
The British crew thought that we were all out of our minds. They just thought it was ludicrous and stupid.
The young, bearded hotshot director who wore blue jeans and trainers also incurred some resentment.
Severed, but it all came down together.
In addition, George's directing style, quiet and unassuming, did nothing to bolster his authority.
I'm not sure exactly which journalist, but he came and visited the set, and after 3 days said, "Which one is the director?" You know, George always seemed to be able to get somebody else to sort of speak on his, like a translator from sort of the non-speak to the speak, which was kind of a little bit what his wife was.
But the actors thoroughly enjoyed themselves.
Okay, cut it. And.
The mic was in frame.
The mic
was in picture.
The mic was in picture.
Everyone back to first position.
The sound department at the band.
Okay, print it and burn it.
They thought the story and the visuals were fantastic, although they did have a problem with the script.
There were lines like, "It'll take a few minutes for the Navicomputer to calculate the coordinates," which had to be said with great energy and verve.
Take a few moments to get the coordinates from the Navicomputer.
You kidding? The rate they're gaining?
Traveling through hyperspacing like dust and crops, boy. Without precise calculations, we'd fly right through a star or bounce too close to a supernova and then it entered trip real quick, wouldn't it?
Lucas had spent months finding the right actors, but once they were on the set, he had little to say to them.
Faster and more intense was the only direction we ever got. And when he lost his voice, which took us days to find out that it actually occurred, we were going to get him a little bored with a horn that said faster and more intense.
I think the problem is simply that George has such a clear vision in his head of what it is that he wants. Actually, trying to get that out of an actor is a bit of an inconvenience. Now, that doesn't mean that he doesn't like actors, that he doesn't appreciate the contribution that they make. It's just that that's not George's favorite part of the job, shooting a movie.
The pressures on Lucas during the filming were enormous. The crew refused to work overtime, and the film quickly fell behind schedule. They were also over budget. In the final days of filming, he had 3 units filming simultaneously on the same set, a madhouse by Hollywood standards.
I had to reshoot the entire hologram speech because my hair was so dark it disappeared into the blue screen and I looked like Yul Brynner, you know, and so we had to reshoot the whole thing on the last day.
You must see this droid safely delivered to him on Alderaan. This is our most desperate hour. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
You know, it was like combat shooting, a lot of it too, because we had no time, because there was no budget.
By the time Lucas arrived back in California, he was exhausted. His special effects company, Industrial Light and Magic, had accomplished virtually nothing in his absence, though they had managed to spend $1 million.
It was very, very difficult. I had some very, very tough times. The lowest point was when I came back, I'd fired my editor, I had to reassemble the movie, recut it, and this was in August, and the film was coming out in May, and went down to ILM, and they didn't have 1 shot. They had 7 shots, all of which were horrible. And I came back, and, you know, I thought this is it. You know, I really got myself into a mess that I'll never get myself out of.
Lucas took personal control of the special effects, and because he'd fired his first editor, he convinced his wife, Marcia, to take over.
You really were married to somebody who was in the same business.
Mm-hmm.
And you trusted her judgment, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, we argued a lot. We didn't have the same taste, really. And it was interesting to hear another point of view. And there was a lot of friction because much of the time I wanted to do it my way.
For the next 6 months, George worked 16-hour days with no time off. But during that period, he designed an entirely new computer-controlled camera system that gave the space battles the fast pace he envisioned.
George, from the very beginning in Star Wars, knew what he wanted, and it was something that I certainly had never seen before. I don't think any of us really had. There's this sense of incredible speed to this big battle that was at the end of the film, with these spaceships flying around and doing, you know, spy rolls and the dogfights that were going on. But it seemed like maybe the idea is beyond what we can do. And you want to go to a new level, and I think George sensed where this other level was. You know, he was a, you know, I guess he liked race cars and all, so he really lived with speed in all his life, and wanted to bring that into his movies.
Lucas did not want the sound to seem manufactured or synthesized. He wanted real noises in his fantasy world, so he hired someone to retrieve them.
He wanted something new and original, and he knew that would take time to develop. They gave me a tape recorder and a microphone, and that began the adventure of Star Wars. I spent a year just roaming about recording things for them.
The film also needed music. At Steven Spielberg's suggestion, Lucas hired John Williams to write the movie's symphonic score. It has become one of the most recognized music themes in cinema history. After 3 years of backbreaking work, Star Wars was finally finished. It looked and sounded like no other movie. But what would the audience make of it? In early 1977, George Lucas finished his rough cut of Star Wars and invited his friends to view it, directors Brian De Palma and Steven Spielberg among them. Most of the special effects had not yet been completed. The battle sequences were just old Second World War footage of aerial combat.
You're screening this movie for your friends, and what do they say?
The old famous screening. Well, I showed it to a group of my friends, some of who just thought it was, felt sorry for me and said, oh, gee, that's too bad, George. Some said, oh, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. And some of who liked it.
And then later on, when George and I were together, and George said, I think I've just made a kid's movie. I think this is not going to fly, so to speak. And I said, I think it's going to be a big hit. And George said, what do you think it's going to make? And I said, I think it'll make 50 to 60. And George says, yeah, well, I think it'll make 15 to 20. Wow, were we wrong.
Even when the film was finally finished, no one knew quite what they had.
I often thought that if we really were successful, if this film really worked out, we might get invited to have a table at a Star Trek convention. And I thought that would be the ultimate goal.
I couldn't wait to see it because I had no idea whether it was going to reflect what I read, which was this great vision again. It was this amazing thing that he thought of, this other world.
Star Wars opened in May of 1977, and within a week it was on the evening news, in the newspapers, in national magazines. By August it had grossed $100 million. It went on to be the highest grossing film in history and stayed there for another 5 years. The film clearly touched a nerve. The fact that it came out during the post-Vietnam, post-Watergate cynicism of the 1970s may have helped.
Timing is everything in art. You bring out Star Wars too early and it's Buck Rogers. You bring it out too late and it doesn't fit our imagination. You bring it out just as the war in Vietnam is ending, when America feels uncertain of itself, when the old stories have died. And you bring it out at that time and suddenly it's a new game. Also, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch Star Wars.
Good luck.
Most of the critics loved Star Wars, although there were a few exceptions.
There were reviews at the time of the initial movies, too, that said, even though they were respectful and said, it's great seeing a Saturday afternoon at the movies kind of escapist comic book movie, that also said, well, it's shallow. There's really nothing to it. What's here? But to me, as a movie nut, as somebody that looked at that movie and said, what's going on in here? I see everything. I see The Wizard of Oz. I see Hamlet with the Darth Vader figure. I see Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, comic books, everything that George Lucas's mind was bombarded with as a kid.
Nearly 3 decades later, the movie is a classic, and it ushered in a new era in filmmaking.
Star Wars was a breakthrough film for multiple reasons. It was revolutionary in the way it did special effects. No one had ever seen anything like that before. The other revolution of that film, I think, was stylistic, which was the future is not this bright, shining place that was created 10 minutes before the camera rolls. The future has a past, and things can look used and worn out. Another revolution was that George brought to science fiction storytelling on film something which is such an obvious marriage, but hadn't been done, which is the power of mythology. Science fiction previously had not truly been mythic. It didn't deal with archetypal characters. And George superimposed the myths and the archetypes on a science fiction landscape and created this fantastic hybrid, which captured the imaginations of a global audience, catapulted science fiction into an A-list genre suddenly. And Hollywood was shocked.
Star Wars' fabulous success left Lucas very rich. There were not only profits from the ticket sales, but also from all the merchandising. Lucas had shrewdly kept most of those rights in a pre-film deal. Once again, the money didn't really affect his and Marsha's lifestyle.
I remember when Star Wars had just come out and they had just made a lot of money and they lived in San Rafael, and I went to visit them. I was sitting in their kitchen and they had this ice box with beveled glass on the front so you could see what was in it. And it was filled from bottom to top with frozen dinners. And I said, you know, I think you guys probably have enough money now, you could get a cook. And they looked at each other and said, oh, that's a good idea.
He didn't go out and buy houses on the Riviera or yachts or boats or lots of cars or things like that, which a lot of people do when they are really flush with success. But George took all of his success and plowed it back into the company.
George's fledgling business, Lucasfilm, now had its hands full with publicity and merchandising demands from Star Wars. He had to employ more people to meet those demands, and he decided to focus his immediate attention on building the company up instead of directing another film.
I think that the whole Star Wars production thing was very trying and wearing on him, and I also think he had found other things to be interested in.
There was never any doubt in Lucas's mind that there would be sequels to Star Wars.
Obviously, the Empire is still there, Darth Vader is still there, and it's going to also evolve with new characters coming in, new problems, new worlds.
In the spring of 1979, production started on The Empire Strikes Back. Lucas was financing it with his own money, again to keep control. Taking on the role of producer, he hired Irvin Kershner to direct. But because Lucas was on the set most of the time, his presence was always felt.
Even if he's not ostensibly conducting the orchestra, he wrote the symphony. You know, if he's around, we're all looking at him.
The Empire Strikes Back continued the Star Wars saga of a rebellion in space, but was more psychologically complex than its predecessor. It also took another leap forward in visuals and special effects.
One of the things that happened over the films is they got more creative. The vision became bigger. And instead of just doing things in outer space or on Tatooine and the desert planet, we were suddenly on on an ice field. And we're in the middle of a forest shooting something.
I always wonder why people don't all scream like I do. Empire's the best, I want Empire.
There is no escape. Don't make me destroy you.
It's just a solid, personal movie that manages to be fun and also manages to touch you on a human level like no other Star Wars movie has since.
I am your father.
George Lucas had taken a financial gamble when he invested his own money in Empire, but it more than paid off. The Empire Strikes Back opened in 1980 and sold more than $300 million worth of tickets worldwide. It seemed as though George Lucas was. In January 1982, production began on Return of the Jedi, the resolution of the relationship between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker.
Now, go, my son. Leave me.
No, you're coming with me. I'll not leave you here. I've got to save you.
You already have.
It's about redemption. I mean, the original film was this big film about redemption and about, you know, the new generation redeeming the older generation. It's up to the sons to resurrect the ideals and the ambitions of the fathers, you know, and to take their dreams that they couldn't quite capture because they stumbled and fell or got shot or turned evil, and try to make them real.
But success didn't come easily or quickly. Lucas had invested money in ILM for years before it showed a profit. As the millennium approached, George Lucas was in his 50s, and he had no intention of slowing down.
7:15 showing of Star Wars. Please have your tickets in your individual hands.
In 1997, Lucasfilm released the Star Wars Special Edition, digitally remastered versions of the original trilogy with some new scenes added. The three films took $450 million in ticket sales alone and reclaimed Star Wars as one of the highest-grossing films of all time.
Right now, yes.
I'm here for the remake, man! It's Star Wars! It's Leia, it's light.
In 1997, production also began on Episode I, The Phantom Menace. This was the first of the so-called prequels, 3 films detailing the early lives of Star Wars characters. Lucas had written the general outlines when he wrote the first Star Wars script back in 1975. The detailed script for Episode I began in 1995. It was his first directing effort in 20 years.
I think the process of doing it was much more appealing to him now. And his children were older, and he was very comfortable having them on the set. The Star Wars saga is his baby, and he knows it better than anybody else knows it.
Like that. Now you gotta kick it.
Lucas also felt that the technology he had helped to create had advanced to the point where he could finally tell the story the way he'd envisioned it. The film has more than 2,000 special effects shots, 4 times that of Titanic, and the first photorealistic, digitally created characters that actually had lines and interacted with live actors.
Patience, my blue friend. You'll have your winnings before the sun's set, and you'll be far away from here.
Not if your ship belongs to me, I think, huh?
I remember the first time seeing the model of Watto, this little junk shop guy, you know. And we had this wonderful actor who was going to supply the voice, you know. But I looked at this thing, and I can't believe, I thought, you know, I could be a monkey smoking a cigarette. No one's going to look at me when this thing's hovering about, you know.
The hype before the film opened was a veritable juggernaut, with every major media outlet doing articles and shows. The film opened in May 1999, and by the end of the year, it had sold close to $1 billion worth of tickets. There was a receptive audience, although the critical reaction was widely mixed. Some thought it was poorly written and acted.
Critics can stand on mountaintops and scream, this isn't good, the acting is bad over here, the jokes are horrible, what is he doing, what's happened to him? It's not going to matter, because he's created something that nobody else has ever been able to pull off. He's created his own world, and he's made us live in it. That's remarkable.
I retransmitted it just as you had requested, Master. Then we decided to come and rescue you. Good job.
Lucas is seen here working on Star Wars Episode II, Attack of the Clones, which he also co-wrote and directed.
I want to switch that around. I want to see what happens.
The film, released in May 2002, is a family affair. Jet plays a young Jedi, and Katie plays the part of a purple Twi'lek. What's different about the film is that it's the first feature film of this scale to be shot with high-definition digital video cameras. It's an entirely film-free production.
George has made
Elevating over Star Wars Rogue Leader, Rogue Squadron 2, which truly demonstrates the gorgeous, lifelike visuals the GameCube is capable of. Unless you've been living in the deep void of space, you know the next installment of Lucas's Star Wars series is nearing release. But for those who can't wait, LucasArts is offering a chance to jump right into the action with Star Wars Jedi Starfighter for the PlayStation 2. A sequel to last year's Starfighter, this franchise within a franchise makes its return with more than just a few additions. This time, players will be able to pilot the new Jedi Starfighter, due to make its debut in Episode 2. The story of the game also acts as a prelude to the film, casting players in the roles of not one, but two pilots. You start off as Adi Kalia, a former student of Mace Windu, who's been sent to help prevent an invasion by the evil Savik Toth. Later, you'll enlist the help of an alien space pirate named Nim. Players will then be able to switch between both ships, Adi's fast and agile Jedi Starfighter and Nim's bluntly powerful Havoc. Both ships have their usefulness, but we kept coming back to Adi's with its Force-powered weapons. Players who like the first title will find more of the same here. The levels are divided between planetary and deep space combat, offering a bit of variety to the proceedings. Also, the mission-based objectives help make the game more than just another tedious shooter. We would have liked a few more ships to choose from during the course of the actual game. The two selectable crafts are cool, but a little variety would have made this sequel light years ahead of its predecessor. But as it is, Star Wars fans are sure to get a blast out of the latest installment of the Starfighter series. With this and a few other Lucas games slated for release in the coming months, we suspect...
Take control of the best fighters in the galaxy and prepare for an epic space battle. Star Wars Rogue Leader, only on Nintendo GameCube.
Christopher Lee is here now looking, I must say, more than fighting fit. We only saw a little bit of you in that clip there, Christopher, because we're told by the movie makers that your part is so pivotal, so important to the drama quite early on that we'd give it all away if we showed clips now. I presume you know what they're talking about.
Yes, I think that's true, yes. I believe I don't even appear in the first hour or thereabouts.
Yeah.
So I've been told, but I can't give you a precise answer because I haven't seen the film.
Right.
Still hasn't seen
I haven't
it.
seen any of it. And so it'll be, for me, a first night in every respect.
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow,
Yeah.
absolutely.
When you do, I mean, I know what do they call it? This blue screen,
Yeah.
technique, where basically you stand there acting, but all the things that we can see around you, you can't see. Here we've got some footage here. Now that is you.
That's me. Yeah.
Everything else that's around you there, you couldn't see what was going on. So how do you do it?
Well, obviously, in the case of what you saw there, which was a fight,
Right.
rehearsal for a fight, and there are some pretty big ones in the film. Obviously that, you do have somebody to do it with. On the other hand, if it's just a single, as we say, on you, and the other person's behind the camera, you have to make the gestures, the same gestures as you would as if there were two of you, same movements, whatever it might be. So does he when it's reversed, and it's him doing his action stuff. But I'm afraid I've said this before, but I shouldn't say it. People say to me, what's it like working with nothing coming from behind the camera? And I say, well, I've had that experience with a lot of my colleagues. Which...
You shall be nameless, I'm sure.
No, absolutely, yes. I shouldn't really say that, but I can't resist it.
Look, we have to
you have to use a lot of imagination. You have to be very inventive.
Yeah.
Well, we actually, as you know, you are now immortalised yet again. You were immortalised as Gandalf in the toys that come out. Saruman, I'm so sorry, Saruman.
There he is.
But here we've got you in your new incarnation. And of course, on the film, we see you doing extraordinary somersaults. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry, they're asking me to move my scripts, they're getting in the way, sorry. We see you doing extraordinary somersaults and things, which obviously had to have been done by a double.
Well, I'm not even sure they were done by a double. Certainly they can be done by what they call CGI, computer-generated image.
You mean stuff like this?
I kind of did the end of the... Yes, I don't remember that one. I must admit.
It's supposed to end up like that, go on.
Yes, well, I did end standing up, and I did a great deal of it myself, as a matter of fact, and perhaps I should be blue screen, all right, you can imagine this entire studio and everything behind us. Well, you do have something blue there, but everything is blue with nothing on it. Now, I know from reading the script what the scene is.
Yeah.
That I'm having a scene with someone or groups of people or whatever it may be. But I don't know what's going to be on the screen behind me or above me or below me or in front of me. I have no idea. George knows, of course.
Don't you find it very disorientating?
No.
Because we did a bit of that, didn't we? And I
No,
actually found
it doesn't bother me.
I found it really strange.
Which film was that, Julia?
No, it wasn't a film. It was titled, and it was kind of like this sort of huge expanse.
Oh, the titles
of
for this programme.
blue over and above, and I found it quite dizzying.
I'm used to it. I think if you have any degree of experience and if you really know what you're doing, and there's still a few of us who do, if you have a powerful imagination and you have any inventiveness in you at all, or the right instincts or whatever, you can see in your mind, either you have seen a person you're working with, who may not be there when you're doing the shot, but you've been with them before. So you see them. I can vividly see them standing there and doing whatever it is
So
they have to do.
you're acting to your own imagination.
Oh,
which
yes,
is
absolutely.
Extraordinary. Look, the rest of the cast and all of the Star Wars films to date get these. They get the straightforward.
That's right.
Yeah, you can see that. The straight lightsabers.
Straight lightsaber, yes.
Sorry about that. How come you got a curved one?
Well, I think you'd have to ask George Lucas that, because...
Well, I heard you ask. I heard you said, I don't want one of these. I want a scimitar. I want something...
No, I didn't say that.
No, I just made that
didn't
up.
say anything like
All right.
that.
What?
I was handed this, and I thought, well, that's an interesting shape. As a matter of fact, it makes it more difficult to fight with, because your wrist is at an angle.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah, I see.
Now, I saw something in a magazine the other day, and there seemed to be about 10 or 15 things built into that hilt, which is so incredibly technical, I can't begin to remember any of them. But they all mean something. Anyway, this is a special lightsaber hilt that I was specially given. Maybe I invented it, who knows?
I read, now I'm probably got this wrong because you should never believe anything that you read, but that George Lucas had to ask both you and Ewan McGregor not to make noises when you were swishing it about. So you're both going... Was it wrong?
That we were doing that?
Yeah,
we were
like small boys, you know.
You see, I told you it was wrong.
Well, I didn't, as far as I can remember.
What a shame, it would have been a great story.
The best bit for me was meeting the stars of the film.
I'm ready for the trials.
Since getting the role, have you been trying to, move things with your mind?
I'm playing a game of pool with my friends. I'll try to use it, but it doesn't work, so I've stopped since then. It's just, I thought maybe I could, but it's all film magic.
What's your earliest Star Wars memory?
Seeing the films. Well, actually, no, prior to all that, playing with my brother's Millennium Falcon in the basement, or being told not to play with it, actually.
What's your earliest Star Wars memory?
Earliest Star Wars memory? I guess being at the original screening, first day, watching it, wishing I could be in something like that.
We're keepers of the peace, not soldiers.
What's your earliest Star Wars memory?
Actually getting a phone call from my agent, someone saying, would you like to meet George Lucas? Well, you know the answer to that question. I said, yeah. I will create a grand army of the Republic. We got on fine. We didn't talk about anything particular, really. Just a friendly chat. I got home, my agent phoned me up and said, you've got the part.
What was it that stood out for you when you saw the first film?
Well, it was, at the time, a unique creation in the cinema. I don't think anybody had ever seen anything like it, as far as I can recall.
Join me, Obi-Wan.
Been sung happy birthday by the fans. Not expecting that tonight?
That's great. It's very special to be here on my birthday.
What's your favorite Star Wars moment?
I don't know, I have so many. I haven't finished it yet, so when I finish it, I'll let you know.
I didn't even have to camp out in my sleeping bag to get a ticket. I'll be telling you more on that later. All the big names were there, and the boys from A1 even turned up.
Of the clones, thousands of Star Wars fans packed into London for the premiere last night. The budding Jedis were greeted by lightsaber masters Hayden Christensen and Samuel Jackson. But Ewan McGregor and Natalie Portman snubbed the bash. Director George Lucas says he's had plenty of time to work on this new trilogy.
Well, it's challenging to keep up your spirits, but I took a 15-year break in between the first trilogy and this one, so I knew what I was up against when I started this
costume. Everything has to be designed and actually made. We shoot all over the world. We shot episode 2 in 5 different countries. And, you know, that can cause some serious brain damage.
George Lucas is undoubtedly one of the most powerful men in the film business, and there are few that would have the courage or the money to build somewhere like Skywalker Ranch, where Lucas has decided to base himself for the last decade. Lucas has built the ranch about an hour's drive north of San Francisco. He doesn't shoot the films here. This is where he plans and puts the movies together. These are his offices, his research centre, cinemas and sound factories. But Skywalker Ranch isn't where they did the thousands of special effects shots. They were done in another secret location. It's owned by George Lucas and it's called Industrial Light and Magic. They made their reputation with films like the original Star Wars, Indiana Jones and Men in Black. But recently in the Oscar states, they've lost out to films like The Matrix and Lord of the Rings, whose effects have been done elsewhere.
I think ILM is still doing the very best work there is in the world. It's just, you know, 5 years ahead of anything else that's being done on any level. And any special effects person will tell you that.
Pain, suffering, death, I fear.
The most difficult thing was actually the creation of Yoda, creating a real digital character that could seamlessly act with live actors. But they're a lot of fun to do, especially if you get it right.
And George Lucas always makes sure it is right. He likes to be in control of everything. That's why he works here. Skywalker Ranch is hundreds of miles away from Hollywood, but more important than distance for George Lucas is the fact that he can base himself here and maintain his own independence from the Hollywood studios, so that he can make the films he wants in the way he wants. And it's worked because his films have become some of the most successful movies ever made. Well, that's it from London's Leicester Square, but don't forget to check out Newsround Light later for an exclusive interview with Enrique Iglesias. Now, and also log on to our website and send in questions for Anthony Daniels, C-3PO, who's coming in for a live web chat tomorrow. And Becky will be back tomorrow, as always, live at 5:25. Until then, may the Force be with you.
They'll be feeling the Force in London's Leicester Square tonight as the latest film in the Star Wars series gets its UK premiere.
Yes, fans will be hoping that Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, will compensate for the disappointing last episode, Phantom Menace. Our arts correspondent, Nina Nanas, had a sneak preview.
Someday I will be the most powerful Jedi ever.
And so, 25 years after the Star Wars series began, we now get film number 5, though it is in fact Episode 2.
You know I don't like it when you do that. Sorry, Master. I forgot you don't like flying. Well, you've lost him. If you'll excuse me.
I hate it when he does that.
Ewan McGregor heads the cast, but much of the rest of the film is computer-generated.
When you go and see a Star Wars film that you're in, it's like seeing it brand new. You know, you're seeing the worlds that they've created are brand new to you. The characters that you played opposite are brand new to you because you haven't seen them, you know.
Join me, Obi-Wan, and together we'll destroy the Sith.
The new film continues director George Lucas's intergalactic story of good versus evil, and advance ticket sales have been predictably high.
Attack of the Clones comes 3 years after Star Wars Episode 1, the much criticised Phantom Menace. The critics' verdict on this one, it's much better. It looks fantastic. Pity about the dialogue.
It relies very heavily on the action sequences, the monsters, the battles and the chasers. And the good news is that all of those are better than ever. The bad news is the dialogue is probably worse than ever.
More bad news, pirate copies have already gone on sale in Malaysia, thwarting plans to beat the pirates by releasing the film on the same day around the world. Not that that is expected to seriously dent the box office takings. Nina Nanar.
Attack of the Clones down in Leicester Square. George is down there, the latest Star Wars movie about to premiere in London. And I gather you've seen the man behind Star Wars, Georgie.
To hear you, I'm sorry.
You're basically going to the papers tomorrow as Anakin Skywalker. What was it like for you?
It was an incredible experience.
teeth into him. It's, you know, he's had a very conflicted time in his life, and to sort of play the duality of the character, it was a challenge.
And is it true that you've got a website for fans all around the world?
I don't know. I'm sort of computer illiterate, so I don't spend too much time on the internet, so I wouldn't know.
Okay, we'll have a lovely evening here tonight.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Dr. Hayden Christensen, who plays Anakin Skywalker, who you see in this film slowly turning into Darth Vader, very broody, a lot of menacing looks at the camera. Earlier on, George Lucas arrived here. It's his birthday today, and of course he's been with this project from 1977 and before, and of course this really is his baby. Can you believe, you know, from 1977 to now, the following that you've had, considering people were so reluctant to back you in the first place?
Well, yeah, it's amazing. It's stood up over all these years, and it's still as popular as it's ever been.
And for you, what keeps you going? You push the boundaries all the time with cinema these days.
Well, I'm trying very much to get the whole series finished. You know, have all 6 stories be one big story.
And what do you make of the critics' response? Does it bother you?
What?
What do you make of the critics' response?
I don't read the critics, to be very honest with you.
And finally, it's your birthday. What's it like to have something like this on your birthday?
Well, it's a coincidence.
Okay, we've got to go, baby. Well, I'm battling here against the London Philharmonic Orchestra, but I think I'm doing okay because I've just found Christopher Lee, who plays Count Dooku in this film. And Christopher, this is a great role for you, very menacing. And I actually said at the end of the film, thank God for Christopher Lee.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
It's a great role for you, very menacing.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the film at all. I haven't seen any of it.
What was it like
This
to be
is the first time for me.
Well, I'm sure you'll love it. What was it like to be part of the whole Lucas?
Part of cinema history, isn't it? Very important.
Okay, well, enjoy it. Enjoy the London Philharmonic, too.
Yes, I'm enjoying everything.
The Jedi Knight, Jedi Windu, he's in this. You've not seen The Phantom Menace too. So The Phantom Menace didn't go down too well with the critics. However, this film has received a little better response. They're saying that the effects really do carry this film. They really are out of this world. And George Lucas is very well known for pushing cinema, pushing the boundaries of filmmaking. And I knew the orchestra were going to do that just as Samuel Jackson arrived. We'll see if we can have a quick word with him now.
Well, we always want to do things in our careers that will be remembered. And you never know what that will be or if that opportunity will present itself. This is kind of like a guarantee, so I'm really pleased to be a part of it.
What was like getting to say some of the lines like, "You must save the Republic"?
I never say things like that. I had an opportunity to say, "May the Force be with you." That's a great moment. It's something that you never think you'll say. It's something that when you're sitting in a theater, when you're a young actor, you wish for, and it's like a dream come true. So I'm really happy to be here. Nobody's coming to see us anyway. All we're doing is moving the story along. Thank God we're there.
Samuel, hi, we're live on Sky News.
Can't make me go back.
He was talking about the fact that this particular film is the second in the trilogy of prequels that we've already seen the first 3 from the 1970s and 80s. So we're now up to the second phase. We're explaining the story a little bit more. We're explaining why a good Jedi becomes Darth Vader. Seeing how Anakin Skywalker and Princess Amidala get together, and then they get married. They have Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker. So you're seeing the whole storyline unfold here. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's pretty crazy here. Can hardly hear a thing. We've got the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra who are playing the score from Star Wars. More to the point, I've got with me Johnny Vegas. Hello. The man himself.
Hello.
So what's the magic of Star Wars, Johnny?
It's been taken to watch the film 7 years of age with an uncle who was on the visitation rights to his kids, and he had to take me, the poppy cousin, because we never went to cinema, and I did, and my life changed for the better. And I trained for the priesthood, and then realised that you didn't get a sword, but it was quite a similar way. I then decided I wanted to live for the betterment of others, I wanted to maintain peace. Then I discovered vodka. I'll never be a Jedi, but it doesn't stop me admiring them.
Johnny, so what's the best thing you've ever done with a lightsaber?
Taking off my brother when he was hitting me with it. You know me, used to be a torch with a bit of plastic on, and then the bulb went, and you could hit someone really hard and it stung it. It hurt. We're going live, aren't we? It really, really hurt, kids. It chapped. But it doesn't leave a mark. Not like the new ones that slide out. They're just vicious. There were toys nowadays. Now they're getting closer to swords. I don't know what's going on in the marketing department, but if I had a lightsaber, I'd help blokes cut trees down and stuff. I'd just genuinely help people outside pubs, but I wouldn't drink, All
right, thanks, Johnny. You better run along and catch the
No, I
film.
want to carry on. Right. I'd move objects from my mum round the house. You know, like heavy things. Because the back's done in. And my
Johnny,
dad,
listen, you
my
done
dad
missed the
never
film.
does it.
Look, it's starting. Quick.
Will you hang around? Now you're trying to get rid of me. You made me.
Look, it's starting right now. Okay, so we've had also...
C-3PO! Yeah, half-built and ditched. That's me on Tatooine.
We've had all sorts of people. We've literally had George Lucas walking past about 2 minutes ago. We've had Hal Berry. She's just walked by. Christopher Lee, who plays Count Dooku. It's really been pretty crazy. There are a couple of stars who aren't here tonight. One of them is Natalie Portman, who plays the love interest, Padme Amidala. She can't be here. She was at the New York premiere. Ewan McGregor isn't here either. But basically, if Kevin can just take a sweep of the crowd. We've got as many people as I've ever seen at one of these events, some of whom have been waiting for 26 hours. So it is pretty crazy. And basically, the story is that everyone's wanting to see what exactly is going to be improved from the last Star Wars. It was heavily criticised. The major sort of player was Jar Jar Binks. He really irritated everyone. And basically, George Lucas has got to hope that this one is full of more clones than groans.
The prequel has landed. Star Wars rolls into town, dragging its weary stars from a North American charity screening gadabout that covered all 4 corners of the continent.
Sometimes we must do what is requested of us.
George Lucas's marketing strategy started subtly, but it's built up into the kind of fanfare that accompanies a $140 million summer blockbuster as surely as Jedi Night follows day.
You're not all-powerful.
Well, I should be. Someday I will be the most powerful Jedi ever.
A lot's happened since The Phantom Menace. It's only 3 Earth years, but a full decade has passed in the Galactic Senate. Queen Amidala is now a senator, and she looks like she's spent most of her royal pension on a selection of natty outfit and headgear combos.
You're making fun of me.
No, I'd be much too frightened to tease a senator.
Ewan's Obi-Wan has his work cut out for him as one of a dwindling bunch of Jedis. He fights just about anything that moves, but ultimately loses a battle not to look like Noel Edmonds and sound like Noel Coward.
Good job.
He's not alone. Yoda still needs lessons on how to construct a sentence.
Begun this Clone War has.
And the pressure of carrying the emotional and dramatic weight of the entire movie is etched all over Hayden Christensen's lovely features.
Excuse me.
Or it could just be the shame of acting with both a mullet and a rat's tail. These rural scenes were practically the only background that wasn't entirely computer-generated. The actors fought invisible enemies against the infamous blue screen. And Attack of the Clones is the first major feature to be shot digitally from start to finish, saving George Lucas about $3 million.
We've managed to catch, so you can hear the music just starting up again. I did manage to catch Samuel L. Jackson, and I put a question to him, what is the whole magic behind Star Wars?
It's magic for me because I've always wanted to be in it, and I thought it was great adventure and great fun to watch, and I just really wanted to be a part of it.
And it's so great that you brought the international premiere to London. So why is that?
I didn't do it. They just asked me to come, and I was glad I was able to. I'm just glad I was able to do it.
And so what's the best thing you've ever done with a lightsaber? What's the best thing you've ever done with a lightsaber?
I can't tell you. You have to come to the movie and see. If I told you what the best thing was, it would give away all of it.
The premiere of the latest episode in the Star Wars saga was held in London tonight, and most of the big names involved were there. The last film was regarded as a bit of a disappointment, but that certainly didn't put off the fans this evening, as our arts correspondent Nina Nanar discovered.
25 years after the first Star Wars was premiered, director George Lucas joined the cast at the premiere of the latest instalment. As stormtroopers mingled with the crowds,
the star guests arrived, including Oscar winner Halle Berry.
You know I don't like it when you do that.
Sorry, Master.
This is what they'd come to see, the 5th Star Wars film.
Well, you've lost.
By Star Wars Episode 1 3 years ago. The good news for George Lucas with this film is that even though the critics don't like some of the dialogue and acting, they love the action. With box office and merchandising, the Star Wars films so far have made around £2 billion worldwide. This new offering will certainly add many more to the bank balance. Nina Nana, ITV.
Star Wars fans besieged a West End cinema last night for the chance to see the stars of the latest movie in the series Attack of the Clones. Ewan McGregor and Natalie Portman couldn't make it, but Samuel L. Jackson and Christopher Lee were both at the London premiere.
To the sounds of the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, Star Wars came to town. The world premiere of Episode 2 marking George Lucas's birthday. Not a bad way to celebrate.
It's amazing it's stood up over all these years and it's still as popular as it's ever been.
And for you, what keeps you going? You push the boundaries all the time in cinema these days.
Well, I'm trying very much to get the whole series finished, you know, to have all 6 stories be one big story.
And that's exactly the function of this sequel. We find out a little more about the characters and why Jedi Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader. 21-year-old Hayden Christensen was chosen from obscurity to play the leader of the dark side.
It was